And thank you, Kate.
Mhm.
And Kate Poverman will call the roll
Okay, Jean Berg,
here.
Dick Benka,
Here.
Oh,
let's see, Ian Rothman,
Here.
Sean Lynn Jones,
Here.
Betsy DeWitt. I admitted her, so
See, you need to unmute.
yeah. Betsy,
Present.
okay. And I'm here. Harry Boers is not here yet. Okay,
thank you. The meeting minutes, Betsy, did you circulate the meeting minutes? I don't remember.
I did not. I
Okay.
haven't been around.
Well, you
I've
took them
seen
from,
them. I have seen them, but I did not circulate them.
excuse me, didn't you take them from the last meeting?
I don't think so. If I did, I don't know about it.
unfortunately, that's my recollection that you were going to take them. And
Well,
unhappy
I
surprise,
apologize. I've been out of the country and I'm discombobulated and not very, I should resign, but I.
No, you
here
don't
as
need
an
to
observer.
resign, but may I make a suggestion? If it's all right with you, just put together from the cloud. And I'll resend the cloud from the notes and the AI from the last meeting. And if you can just put them together. And then for our next meeting, if you're here, when do you leave?
I'm gonna leave in about 3 weeks. And I'll be gone until April.
Well, all right. Okay.
but we do have the.
I'll figure out how to do the minutes. Don't worry about it.
Jean,
What?
we still have the October 6th or maybe the October 20th minutes to approve. I don't remember which ones, but whichever ones I wrote.
The ones you wrote were approved, I thought.
No, because you wanted some changes made, remember?
Yeah, I know, but I thought, all right, you want to, have they been
Whichever one-
circulated?
No,
If
They
they
should
weren't
be posted.
circulated, can we approve them? Because they're
No.
not in the
posted.
Have you
packet.
circulated them?
I don't recall seeing them.
No, I did see them. That's all right. Okay,
Yeah, they
well,
were
that'll be for
posted.
the next meeting.
Wait, all it did was change the word when it was a hearing and I'd written meeting, it was changed. So the use of the word hearing and meeting was corrected to reflect, it was a session where it sometimes switched from a hearing to a meeting, and it didn't always correctly reflect that. So Jean asked me to correct that, and I did, and she said, just send it to me. I sent it to her, so you'd all seen it, and that was the only difference.
And you have circulated them prior to that?
I had circulated, you guys had looked at them, and Jean wanted that change.
Did we vote on them subject to that change?
No.
No?
We didn't vote at all on these meetings.
Oh,
Yeah. No.
all right, yeah.
All right, let's hold it for the next meeting. All right, just to be careful. All right, and we'll be doing me or somebody doing these meeting minutes too. All right, enough about minutes. I wish Harry were here, but actually this doesn't apply as much to him. It applies more to Dick and Sean. If you could, when you get a chance, send me the days that you're responsible for your committee meetings of these wonderful meetings, these important committees you're on, I can get a sense of how to schedule meetings a little better.
Will do.
Yeah, I don't know what day of the week it is that you usually meet, okay? And that will help.
Harry Boers is trying to log in apparently, but is having difficulty. I don't know if there's any evidence of his virtual presence.
Kate?
I don't see him trying to be admitted.
How do you know that? Email you, Sean?
I just got an email which went to everyone on the committee saying, is anyone else having difficulty logging in? Which
Ask him to try
yes,
again.
he's trying.
Yeah, I'll resend him the link I have that worked. So
Mine was difficult too, so I'm not going to try. Hey, McGilvert, are you still there?
Yeah, I was gonna make someone a host.
Is there any chance you can help Harry get in?
I just sent him the invite again.
Okay. And would you make Dick a co-host, please? I didn't even ask you, Dick, all right?
No, that's fine.
I thought I'd been co-host and was admitting all those people, but Kate and I must have been doing it at the same time.
Thanks, Kate McGilvert.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
I'll wait a couple of seconds for
Yeah,
Harry.
I will say that as host, I am not getting any,
Nibbles.
nor am I getting any notice that anybody is trying to sign in, Harry included.
Well, other people, in the chat box, there's other people, so, I mean, in the participant box, other people are getting in. So. And Harry and I have already had a chat, right, Harry? Harry, Kate, and I. All right. So Dick and Kate will sort of keep their eye out for Harry. Kate has sent him another link. Let's see what happens.
So the waiting room is enabled. Just so that I don't inadvertently exclude somebody or preclude somebody from getting in. What I have seen in the past is so-and-so is in the waiting room, admit, don't admit, and I'm not seeing anything pop up on my screen. And I've always seen something pop up when I've hosted a meeting. And I find it a little baffling that I don't see anything popping up for Harry.
Yeah, no, earlier when I was temporarily hosting, that's what I saw, but I haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
for Harry. I didn't see anything.
If you open the participants list, anybody in the waiting room will appear at the top.
But
There's nobody. Yeah.
there's nobody there.
That means
Harry.
nobody's there, but it's easier to see sometimes in that list as opposed to waiting for your
The
screen.
admit,
to
yeah,
say
I agree
somebody
with you,
wants to
but
get
I've got
in.
it open and there's nobody come, yeah, there's nobody.
Okay. All right.
But thank you. Yeah. All right. Ian, you are going to give a presentation on Articles 11 and 12 and tell us what to do or not to do.
something like that.
Looks like Harry is with us, so it's perfect.
Good.
Really?
Good.
Harry's with us?
Who let him in?
Why? Harry, we didn't even miss you.
So you guys all done with business?
Yeah, we've just wiggled and waggled and squirmed for 10 minutes trying to find you.
I
Welcome.
apologize.
Okay, Ian.
Okay. All right. So, on what was warrant articles 11 and 12, I guess I have a few thoughts by way of background, and I circulated some materials, which you may have had a chance to look at or may not, and we can kind of talk about those materials. So, I think the sort of first place to start is with the purpose of the restriction as drafted. And of course, we're looking at this fresh, and so we can, we can certainly be informed by what we believe town meeting intended at the time the restriction was adopted, or we can do something different. I don't think, unlike the consideration, I think of warrant articles 11 and 12, I think our playing field is a little bit broader now, because our charge is to make a recommendation as to what we view as the correct policy. So for starters, I think it's useful to look at what the duties of the advisory committee are. Those duties come from two sources. The first source is state law, which is very general. The relevant statute in the general laws simply says that the advisory committee is required to, quote, consider any or all municipal questions for the purpose of making reports or recommendations to the town. So that hard to imagine something more broad than that. Our bylaws, in that section 2.2.5, provide for 4 specific duties for the advisory committee. The first one is that the advisory committee shall consider any and all municipal questions, including appropriation requests and proposed actions under all articles in the warrant for a town meeting, for the purpose of making reports and recommendations to the town. The second duty is the committee shall submit a budget at annual town meeting. The third duty is, and this one is is a may, not a shall. But the third duty is the advisory committee may examine the books and records of any board, committee, or officer of the town so far as permitted by law. And the fourth one is phrased a little bit differently, at least the sentence structure is different. But the fourth duty is that the superintendent of schools, in the case of school appropriations, and the town administrator, in the case of all other appropriations, shall submit their requests for appropriations to the committee by a certain date, as many of you know. I'm going to pause here. My computer is frozen. All right. Well, my computer is frozen. Can you guys all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll try and remember what my notes said, because I can't see them now. In looking at those duties and looking at this restriction, it strikes me that there are 2 concepts that are at play. The first is an accounting or finance concept, which is the concept of separating out membership from the advisory committee, other boards or committees who have some sort of financial role in the town. And I think that concept comes from a very, I think, common concept in accounting or finance of a separation of functions or a segregation of duties, where you don't want the same person or body to be making a budgetary request as the one that is approving the budgetary request. You don't want the same body or entity to be approving the allocation of money as the one who is actually dispersing that allocation of money. So I think that that's a very common concept of a separation of functions. I think there's a second concept at play here, which is a governance concept, which is that the advisory committee is a committee of the legislative branch of our town government. And most of, nearly all of the boards and committees of the town are functions of the executive branch of the government. And so I think there is not something that's not exactly the same as our federal checks and balances, but something analogous to that, which is a separation of the legislative review of, particularly of the budget, from the executive recommendation, request, et cetera, and disbursement of the budget. So I think that those are the two sort of primary concepts that are at play here, and I think that they're important concepts to keep in mind. I circulated, and I think hopefully you had a chance to see. If not, it's on the notes for this meeting. Some examples of how other representative town meeting communities handle this question, and you'll see that there's a range, and we're probably in the middle. So it ranges from the more restrictive ones, which are Arlington, Wellesley, Winchester. Those are examples of those, where it essentially prohibits any membership in boards or committees other than ones that are specifically required by town meeting to include a member of the whatever the town calls it, whether it's the advisory committee or the finance committee. Those are the most restrictive ones. There are several communities, as you may have seen, that have no restriction whatsoever. And then there are a couple in the middle, which have some restrictions, but ones that are probably not as onerous as us. I guess the last sort of thought that I'll share and then turn it over to everybody else is that I think there are two concepts for us to be mindful of as we're thinking about this. The first is to preserve the independence of the advisory committee as a body comprised of qualified, experienced, and independent people to provide advice to town meeting on the budget. And to the extent that the people who are on the advisory committee are the same as ones who are advocating for budgetary disbursements, budgetary allocations, whatever it may be, for certain of their own, of certain committees or projects, that I think has the risk of undermining the independence of the voice of the advisory committee. I think on the other side of the coin is the reality that there are only so many people who are willing to spend their time and energy and devote those to committee membership within the town. And so I think we want to be mindful not to be so onerous as to restrict the pool of qualified eligible committee members for other committees. So with that in mind, I sort of put together, and these weren't meant to be like a menu where you have to pick one, but I put together a series of various different, possible options that we could consider that, follow a continuum of, from no restrictions to very onerous restrictions or very tight restrictions. I guess I lean not that strongly in favor of one of those options, but I think I'll probably wait and hear what other people have to say before I kind of share that leaning. But overall, I do think it's important to maintain the independence of the advisory committee, as a body to give advice to town meeting on the budget. So I'll stop there and let somebody else talk, and maybe try and unfreeze my computer in the meantime.
Oh, I was going to have you recognize people. Who wants to make the first comment?
Harry?
Sure. Sorry, I couldn't find the little icon for raising the hands. So a couple of things. First off, thank you to Ian for doing this work. It's been really helpful. Having a sense of sort of what the lay of the land is, looking at other municipalities, and then the way you sort of broke them out from least onerous to most onerous, or vice versa, which I think is very helpful. So thank you. I was not nearly as prepared, as diligent as Ian was, so I wasn't able to send out anything beforehand. It wasn't until this afternoon. I've been sort of ruminating over this last couple of days since we got this. And I understand a little bit more listening to Ian tonight, where he's coming from the notion of wanting to assure that the advisory committee has independence and not undermining that. And I suppose there's a number of ways to view that, explicitly or implicitly. So I stepped back for a minute and thought about, all right, what if we look at it from a different angle, which goes back to trying to understand why this was originally put in place, or why other municipalities do it. And I don't think we know for sure. But certainly what has been written in and the way town council has been viewing this really seems to hinge on the expenditure of funds, which is why some members of the advisory committee were advised to step down, because they were actually involved in making decisions on the expenditure of funds. And if there was a way to sort of look at those elements too, I actually have a Word document, so maybe I should just call it up in a second and share it so people can see. But I looked at the language as it now stands for the advisory committee, about no member of a committee shall be an employee of the town, so forth and so on. And spliced in, shall be an employee of the town or a member of any standing board or committee, either where they have direct charge of the expenditure of funds, or what I prefer even above that would be exercise final or direct authority over the expenditure of funds. And the reason I was thinking of exercise is there's a difference between being on a board, committee, commission, where technically you might have that authority, and if it's something where there is a conflict that you can simply step back. And again, I understand that's making a large assumption that this is driven by a concern about a member having a pecuniary interest, whether as an individual or as a representative for a group. And then I sort of looked at it a little deeper, keeping that in there and thinking of a secondary clause, which this would get more toward advisory committee members and their role as advisory committee members. And I'll underscore advisory. I think the advisory committee runs through these things. It has lots of hearings. It makes recommendations to town meeting. I think it's pretty clear, though, that the legislature, the legislative body, kind of has a mind of its own. But yes, the advisory committee does get to weigh in early, which can influence things. Anyway, the other clause would be, nor shall they, meaning member of the advisory committee, in their capacity as an advisory committee member, vote for a direct expenditure of funds that may benefit an organization where they hold a leadership position. So if you're on the Council for Aging, you don't get to vote to give funds to the Council on Aging, and you can think of any other number of groups. Generally, the advisory committee really doesn't, unless it's the expenditure of liability funds or the reserve fund. Otherwise, they're just recommendations. And like Ian, I'm not wedded to any of this, but I at least wanted to throw that out there because it kind of looks at it from a different angle. If we're trying to deal with perceived pecuniary interests, how we guard against that. And maybe what we work toward is some resolution that takes into account all of these things. I think there's a lot of options and food for thought. So I'll leave it there for now. And if people want, I can at some point, if I can share the screen, I can call up my Word document and you can kind of see it, and I can send it out to people too.
I'd
And
like
I
you to send
apologize.
it out, Harry.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, Sean?
Okay. I think I may be on the same page as Harry, but I haven't seen the page yet, so I can't be entirely sure about that. But I had a few other observations. First, thanks for all of the research you did in pulling this together. I had a chance to look at it a few times, and it's very stimulating, almost to the point of sometimes making my head spin because there are so many, moving parts and ideas here. But a couple of general observations, and then maybe I'll get down into the weeds. First general observation is that it's very useful to have the information from other communities. But based on my experience in meeting with the members of advisory committees from other communities, they really operate very differently than Brookline in a lot of cases. So we have to be cautious about using anyone as a model, but they give us a menu of ideas, I think, that we may or may not want to pursue. But I think that a lot of other communities have a much smaller advisory committee that's just a finance committee, and there's really a committee of budget experts more than anything else. Whereas Brookline has a larger and much more engaged advisory committee that does much more on the warrant articles, usually, than on the budget, in terms of the actual number of hours invested. If you look at the agendas for meetings, I think it's fair to say that. The other general observation is, although I don't think town council is with us for this meeting, I think it's important that we do something that even if we disagree with town council's interpretation of the key language here, we create a bylaw that cannot be interpreted or misinterpreted, however you look at it, in a way that creates the kinds of problems that have led to the warrant articles and the referral back to CT-ONS here. And I think we should, not argue over how something should be interpreted, but make sure that we eliminate at least most of the possibilities of having those arguments by whatever language we use. My third general observation, and this may be early to think about it, but we have to consider scope issues as we report on any amendment to the existing bylaw. And I'm not sure exactly how the moderator will regard those, but it would be a mistake for us to come up with a proposal that is likely to provoke a lot of objections, which could not be rectified without doing something outside the scope of the warrant article, because then it would just be referred back to us or to someone else. And there are some ways we can, get around that with, careful drafting, and also even a minority report and an alternative approach in a different warrant article, whether filed by an individual or by the committee, just to ensure that town meeting has the right kind of choice and doesn't find its hands tied. Again, my other concerns get more into the details here, and this is a very specific one. Regards your option 2 and 3, I think, and you list the audit committee as one of the committees that the advisory members should be prohibited from serving on. I mean, it's been the practice for as long as I can remember to have a member of the advisory committee on the audit committee. That's not by bylaw, but it's by the fact that the advisory committee is one of the appointing authorities. And I think it's almost always the case that the advisory committee appoints one of its own members to serve on the audit committee, although it could reach out and appoint anyone, I suppose. But usually it's easier to find someone in the room, and the people in the room are interested. Kate?
Moderator is the appointing authority.
No, the advisory committee designates one person, though.
Actually, just to clarify this, rather than, I think Article 3.5.1 of the bylaws has the select board appointing one person,
Oh, yes.
advisory committee appointing one person, the school committee appointing one person, and the moderator appointing 3 people.
You're right. I was right. Sorry.
Yeah. And I'm just saying, I don't think that it would be wise to exclude advisory committee members from the audit committee. And in fact, it is the practice to include them through this provision, slightly indirectly, but it's the way it works out. It's interesting, just as an aside here, it's that as far as I can tell, there's no similar approach in Brookline's general bylaw as to name the select board, the school committee, etc., as specific bodies that cannot have members simultaneously on the advisory committee. But I can't remember any case in which they have overlapped, or anyone even suggesting that that might be a good approach. So maybe it's a belt and suspenders kind of idea to add that to our bylaw, but it's sort of a problem that hasn't existed, and maybe it would be useful to make it clear. So in terms of the general spectrum of ideas here, my tendency is to lean to a more liberal approach, but somehow being very specific regarding the expenditure of money. And I think Harry gave some language for that. That might not be the ideal language, but it seemed to be headed in the right direction. The other point, if we were to do something like option 6, the Arlington model, it would be, I'd even broaden it a little bit more to say that not only is it a matter of when service is required by the bylaws or by a vote of town committee, required or encouraged by the bylaws, by state law, or by a vote of town meeting, because there may well be cases in which whatever's in the general bylaws, there'll be a specific committee that really should have someone from the advisory committee, and there shouldn't be any challenge to that. Which is really where Article 11 began, I think, with the Pierce School Building Committee. And we could enumerate that type of committee, or we could just say the general principles that should apply to allow advisory committee members to serve. So I think that's all I have, and probably too much for now. But I think it all goes back to rewriting this language in a way that it's clear, not subject to alternative interpretations. And I lean to being a fairly liberal and inclusive, as opposed to the restrictive end of the spectrum.
Dick, any thoughts?
Yes, thank you. First, I do think that when we circle back to this at our next meeting, which might be in February, we should hold a public hearing as part of our consideration of this article. I think that would certainly be warranted, given, if nothing else, the difference of opinion on this committee. I just want to follow up on a comment that Sean made about other finance committees in other towns. I think we are unusual in that regard, in having a committee with up to 30 members, and generally 26, 28, at least 2 dozen, more than 2 dozen members. Harry Friedman, I see, is on. I don't know how many we have now, 26, 27, 28, in that range.
We have 29. We're missing 1 member.
Okay. Thank you. And other communities, to the best of my knowledge, are significantly smaller. Natick, I think, has 15. Most of the other communities range between 7 and 9, if they're in that range. So if we are concerned about independence or undue influence on the advisory committee, I think that any influence that one person could have on a committee of this size is going to be much more diffuse than it would be, or diffused than it would be in a much smaller committee. So the concept of undue influence is something that I think doesn't concern me as much, given the size of this committee. I also, if we're concerned about influence, tying it to being in charge of expenditures or budgetary responsibility on another committee I think doesn't really address that question of influence or independence. If independence is the issue, you theoretically would want people who aren't involved in any other activities in town. I mean, take the Council on Aging, which doesn't have any expenditure responsibility to the best of my knowledge, but people are deeply committed to that. Should they be excluded from the advisory committee because of their passion and their commitment about a topic, or the Commission on Women, or the Commission on Disability? Does the mere fact that a body has some expenditure responsibility make the individuals who sit on that body, does it somehow give them more influence on the advisory committee? And I suspect that it does not. So I think focusing on the monetary aspect here is, if you are concerned about people unduly influencing votes on the advisory committee, is probably not a fertile ground to plow, putting aside the issue of the size of this committee. And then finally, I think having people who are involved in other committees, who are giving time to other committees, is important to bring expertise and cross-fertilization and perspective to the advisory committee. So I am certainly favoring the liberal side. My instinct would be something like option one, unless I hear something persuasively to the contrary. I'd probably exclude members of the select board, since they are effectively the executive branch and control the departments. But other than members of the select board, I'm not sure that sitting on a commission and the school committee, other than sitting on a what is in our town advisory committees involved with issues, should be disabling for the advisory committee. With that, I also very much want to thank you, Ian, and for an incredible job pulling this all together. And
Would you have an employee on the committee?
I would
What's
not
that?
have employees. No, I mean, all of
How
of the
liberal
options-
are you?
Yeah, all of the options did not contemplate having employees on the committee.
But he wouldn't mind if we changed part of his option, would he?
No, I wouldn't mind. Kate,
I
Kate, do you have thoughts?
completely, well, so my first reaction to this, after wanting to bow at the feet of Ian, was this can be so simple. Oh my God. And let's just go with number one. It's like agreeing with, well, first I agree with Dick, but I'll get to that in a second. It's just take out the noise. Just eliminate all the unnecessary language and the issues. Make it easy to interpret by taking everything away. And I think Dick made the most important points in doing that by saying that the idea of one person having realistically undue weight on 28 other members' votes, or being able to sway the entire advisory committee to act some way or another, is very slim. It's just not going to happen, whether financially or in some other way. And it's necessary to have those people who are interested in participating in government participate. And so I would vote for excluding only employees and select board members. And I don't think anybody who's on the school committee and has that much work would ever consider being on the advisory committee. So you can put that in there. But Yeah, Ian disagrees on it. But, okay, if that's the case, then yeah, put school committee on there too. But I think let's just make it simple. So Ian, I really appreciate what you did. And really, I thank you. And I would go for just simplifying the thing. It eliminates the possibility that we're ever going to argue again about the meaning of this article or this particular phrase.
Betsy, did you have any thoughts?
I'm looking for the least complex.
I would say simplicity is certainly my inclination, but I also think that I'm hearing interesting observations from members. I'm sufficiently detached, but what I will say is that the role is important, and therefore the consideration of the structure and or membership or whatever you want to call it of the committee should be determined and considered because of the role of the committee. And it's an important, significant role. And therefore you want it to be populated by people who have the correct qualifications and very limited conflicts of interest. Thank you.
Jean, do you have thoughts?
Not much. I just see it as make it as least complex as possible, because making all these arguments to the town meeting would be very confusing and difficult to get across. If I was sitting in town meeting thinking about it.
Yeah.
I join everyone else in saluting you for the job you did, putting all this in front of us. Computer down or no computer down, well done. I'm probably on the other end of the spectrum. Not probably, I am, because I want to make it as simple as possible. And I do think the advisory committee is terribly important.
Yeah, I'll add a couple of additional thoughts in response. So the first is that I think I started where you were, Harry, that trying to describe a financial role, but I think for two reasons I moved away from that. One is the point that I think everybody has made, which is we ought to have language that's not susceptible to multiple interpretations. And related to that, I did have a conversation with Chaz relating to our next topic. And in that conversation, I asked him, from your perspective, which are the committees that have a significant financial role? And the list is eclectic, to say the least. He included, and things I would not have known, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, which sets rates, and the building committee, which is approving change orders. Parks is setting certain fee rates. The Housing Advisory Board is voting on the Affordable Housing Trust money. It's things that I don't think we necessarily would. Number one, I don't know that we would want to be in the business of having to interpret for each new person who happens to be on one of those committees whether the prohibition applies to them. And secondly, do we really, for the Parks Committee, do we really think it's a problem if someone who's sitting on the Parks and Rec Committee is also on the Advisory Committee? I think probably not. I think we're probably all comfortable with that. So I sort of moved away from trying to define the financial role because I just think it gets too messy too quick. It's both over-inclusive and in some ways under-inclusive. I guess where I was leaning, and I take your point, Sean, about the audit committee, but I was leaning toward option 3, and maybe we remove audit committee from that, which is just simply to say you can't hold an elective town office. And the biggest challenge to that is that there are 2 members of the advisory committee, I believe, who are constables, which is an elective town office. And there could be, I think there are principled arguments as to why someone who is serving eviction notices and other other process that can be deeply personal to people in the town and involved in adversarial disputes, that is maybe not consistent with having a body that is, supposed to be an independent and prudent, advisor to town meeting. I don't know that that's a battle that we necessarily need to take on. And I think, as a couple of people have mentioned, it's, probably the core separation that we want to preserve is select board and school committee. And so, defining it as elective town offices, probably, it brings in the library trustees, who certainly have responsibility over significant funds. It brings in constables, it brings in the town moderator, who's not going to be on advisory committee anyway. So it doesn't do that much different from limiting it to school committee and select board, but I'd be comfortable with limiting it to school committee and select board as well.
I would add library trustees as part of that trio, unless someone can make a strong argument that there's a major difference. I guess, especially if the library trustees are more like the school committee in some ways than the select board in their ability to, set a budget and to run their department, basically.
Yeah.
And of course, they are elected townwide. But it's hard for me to see grounds for excluding the constables, but open to arguments there.
Only for consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was one model I saw, which I may not have included either because it wasn't a representative town meeting town, or I just thought it wasn't, that you can see the language in 3 that says shall hold elective office other than town meeting member, also said other than town meeting member or constable. I did see that in one of the other models. Yeah, Harry?
Yeah, a couple of things. I agree with a lot of Dick's observations in terms of the value of having people on the advisory committee who serve in other places. I think that's helpful. And I'm probably most aligned, at least in principle, with Kate in terms of she would like there essentially to be no restrictions and keep it simple. But I'll push back on that a little bit. In that, I think town meeting and the community has to be comfortable with this. We already have a bylaw in there that sets certain restrictions, and they do, again, have sort of a financial focus on them, which I don't think is unreasonable. Maybe the notion is not to try and constrain somebody in their duties on, as a trustee for the cemeteries or whatever it may be, and rather just limit it into their actions while they're serving as advisory committee members, if it is a vote to expend funds that would benefit their organization. But it also gets a little bit to this notion of, even if there's not an impropriety, there's, the notion of an appearance of impropriety, and at what point does somebody just raise their hand and say, hey, no fair, even though that may not be the case. And so would this be a way to sort of give some cover, is probably not the best way to phrase it, but give some cover to the advisory committee, so that they don't get caught into somebody calling foul, whether there's foul or not. And then the other comment that I would have on the constables is, I think for the most part, they get paid independently by lawyers and that sort of thing. We do use them if the town has to send something out. They strike me as being a little bit different than other elected officials. But, I don't have any hard feelings one way or the other.
We're also forgetting one other important elected official, the town clerk. But no one has ever suggested that the town clerk would want to be on the advisory committee or should be.
Right. Although we are, I mean, we're not, I don't think we are, I think we're drafting a bylaw not for only today and today's town clerk and moderator and constables, but right, we're just for the concept, for the position, not the person. So I mean, I don't think that there's that much daylight between options 2 and options 3, especially if we take the constables out of option 3 and audit, take audit committee out of both. I think they're pretty equivalent and both easy to apply and not particularly onerous.
I mean, I agree.
Uh,
This is Kate, but
Fair enough.
I do think, following up on both Dick and Harry, that a public hearing would be a very important way to get
The next meeting will
Yeah.
be a public hearing, Sean.
yeah, and to just
Thank
get
you, Dick.
word out.
Now the question, if this, do you want to continue the discussion of this or wait for the public hearing?
well, I have one. Sorry, I dropped out. My computer crashed. But I have. I missed a bunch of the discussion, so I apologize for that. So I have one comment, and then I would like to know what sort of, just very quickly, what sort of discussion of introducing financial constraints was discussed, maybe by Harry. Because if there are financial conflict issues inserted, I really wouldn't want it to get too complicated, because I think I understand the appearance of impropriety, but I think that's where things could get really messy. The second thing is, my understanding is that we would be introducing a new warrant article, so that we wouldn't have to worry about scope. Does anyone else have a different understanding?
My earlier comment, Kate, was based on whether town meeting might try to amend that warrant article, but have the amendment ruled as being out of scope.
I don't think anyone's gonna touch the, touch the thing.
I think, Kate, my sense is that we will be proposing an amendment to an existing bylaw. So that would put a limit on scope, I believe, such that any amendment would have to fall between the existing bylaw and the proposed amendment that we proposed in order to be in scope.
Of course, I think
But-
it's CTOS prerogative to introduce something at any time if it felt it was needed,
Yeah,
which may
but
not be within scope, but may just be something separate.
yeah, but we'd be taking I think a different approach than if we took out the financial aspect, we'd be taking a completely different approach, which would, I think, complicate the scope issue a bit. We would say, look, you can be on the advisory committee as long as you're not in on the following: the select board, school committee, library trustees, if that's where you end up.
Would it be within scope to amend that potential, sketched out warrant article with a much longer list of committees on which advisory committee members cannot serve? I can imagine a town meeting member might say, well, that's great. I understand select board, school committee, and library trustees, but I want to add the HAB. I want to add park and rec,
Yeah.
and so on and so on and so on.
Well, I guess one could argue that, and we're getting kind of far afield here, but one could argue that if the HAB, as Ian said, if the HAB and Park and Rec have control over the expenditure of money, adding them to that list would probably be in scope because they would theoretically be prohibited at this point. So it wouldn't move outside the guardrails of the existing article and the proposed new article.
You're
But-
probably right, Dick, but moderators come up with such interesting
No.
interpretations, as do town councils.
I don't know.
I don't see what you're gonna have a public hearing on if we can't decide which direction we're going.
Well, I have a sense, Gene, that we're sort of gravitating toward-
Swimming, not gravitating.
toward 2 or 3, which I don't have the list in front of me right now, but essentially employees, school committees, select board, maybe library trustees,
Maybe.
but not including members, not including well, I guess constables, yes or no, but not including this financially related language, if I understand.
So you're taking
People-
that out. Is that correct? You'd be taking that out?
That's my understanding of what people
Yeah.
think makes sense at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess I would say it a little bit differently, Dick. It's not that we're taking out the financial language, it's that we are describing it in a way that we don't include a qualitative kind of description that needs to be applied. So it's a bright line rule that's intended to achieve the same goal. But let me ask maybe for just a straw poll, how would people feel about the language I was suggesting a moment ago, which is to say, so that the language would be no member of the committee shall be an employee of the town or shall hold elective town office other than town meeting member or constable, period.
Sure.
I'm- I'm reasonably comfortable with that language, with the caveat that there's nothing in this to prevent somebody from voting to give their own organization funds. And I can't believe that somebody isn't going to raise their hand and say, hey, wait a minute, the way this was written before, it prevented that, and now somebody can be on the committee and they can vote to expend funds to their own board, committee, commission that they may serve on, with the exception of the 2 that you mentioned.
But Harry, that prohibition doesn't exist now, in that if somebody is on the Council on Aging and deeply committed to it, the Council on Aging does not disperse funds, and yet members of the Council on Aging sit on the advisory committee.
So
Deeply,
I'm saying the other way around, that you would have somebody on the advisory committee who could expend money as a member of the advisory committee to fund, whether it's the Council on Aging
or the senior center,
or the seniors, or whatever it may be.
right? But you have that now under the existing language.
And I would also say that you're back to the 1 out of 29 votes.
Yeah,
Well, there is
because
that.
because the Council on Aging is not in charge of the expenditure of money, I think under town council's current interpretation, a member of the Council on Aging can sit on the advisory committee now. And
Yeah.
has.
Yes, but I'm getting to a more substantive issue as to whether we want to consider that members of the advisory committee should not cast a vote to expend funds toward their
Okay.
own particular interests.
Harry,
That's different than advising on a budget. This is actually expending funds.
But how is that? I mean, that was going to be my question to you. I mean, doesn't the advisory committee vote on the overall budget?
No,
It doesn't?
they don't. do not make the expenditure. They make a recommendation for town meeting to consider, is what they do. However, if it's reserve fund, if it's liability fund, they vote to directly make a payment out of the liability fund or out of the reserve fund.
Okay. So only in those cases.
It's very limited. It's very limited.
Okay.
And I don't know that there's going to be real pushback, but I think it's, given what we have now, and that people will likely pay attention to it because this has come before town meeting, we sort of need to think about how do we want to contend with that, whether putting something in to contend with it or being able to address it if we don't, and the question comes up.
Okay. So if the senior center came in for a reserve fund transfer,
Right.
a
And
member
yeah.
a member of the Council on Aging who also sits on the advisory committee could not vote, is what your thinking is.
Right, or something from a liability fund or that type of thing.
But
Yeah.
not with regard to their general act. Okay, not
with regard to their general activity of
their
just
general budgetary
being opinion on-
activity
right.
would not be of concern.
Correct.
Okay.
I think we could come up with an almost infinite number of cases like this if we wanted to sit around and think about it. An advisory committee member serves on the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. The Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee needs more money for another study. The planning department comes in and says, we didn't think this would happen at all. We need a reserve fund transfer because of whatever. And, the advisory committee member, not even thinking that they would have any connection to the expenditure of funds being on the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, is suddenly in the position of having to abstain or offer a disclosure. Or how does the conflict of interest law apply just in general in these situations, even if we don't put any language in the bylaw?
I don't think the conflict of interest law applies. That's the issue, because it's not a personal conflict. But I think this is exactly the reason why some communities, or at least one of the reasons why some communities have a broader bright line rule, that if you're on the town's finance committee, that's the only committee you're going to be on.
That's what I would like.
Okay.
He's
I think the
draconian.
advisory committee is important enough to leave it alone. And the 1 out of 29 doesn't move me. I think that's a funny way to say you're going to vote. Cake.
Hey, Dick brought it up first.
Well, it looks like we have a horse race.
Well, I'm in the minority, so there's no horse race. I think it's so complex what you're trying to do. One thing leads to another. And having served on the advisory committee, I think it's important enough that they just serve on the advisory committee.
Well, again, I sort of what Sean was getting into, trying to imagine, it wouldn't be a conflict, but the ramifications of trying to specify committees and boards that could possibly be seen as problematic could go on forever. So,
Drive town meeting crazy.
trying to draft the language would just be problematic. So I say keep it simple, but not as simple as Jane wants.
But both of those solutions are simple, and they're clear, bright line rules. One is just a permissive bright line rule, and the other is a more restrictive one.
Yeah.
Right. So
no, I would not object to your language, Ian, as a starting point. I took option 1 and added select board, school committee. I think your language would add the library trustees to that, essentially, and town clerk as
well. Town clerk, of course, under our current system, would be disqualified as a town employee.
That's true.
Ever becomes a volunteer position, which I doubt.
double disqualified.
Would school employees? Would it be town and school employees just to?
I think employees of the school employees are employees of the town.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I would be comfortable with the language as a starting point.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I can, if we're going to have a public meeting, I can tee up another version of the options that essentially have the gene more, I don't want to call it more restrictive, more independent advisory committee right line rule, and and then the limiting it only to elected officials
Would
right
you
line rule.
agree that we should have one more meeting before we have a public hearing on this?
no, I don't think we need to.
You don't? Okay.
People may feel differently, but I think
People still seem to be polishing and polishing.
no, I think it would be useful to get public input at this point, and we've kind of circled around the issue. And
Okay, everyone agreed? All right. Anyone want to postpone
The
it? to a
question is,
second?
would we have one more meeting that would
We
not
would
be a
have one
public
more
hearing
meeting.
after the public hearing? That
We
is,
would,
we'd
yeah.
have 2 total meetings
It
between
would
now
be
and
3 the other way, yeah. If we had to have another meeting before the public hearing, it would be 3.
no, I would think it would be more beneficial, Gene, to have the public hearing, and then if we're going to have 2 more meetings, have the public hearing as the next meeting, and then a public meeting after that.
Okay, so
Um,
so would you look at your calendar and Sean and Ian, you know what you have to do.
Yeah, did you say February 4th? Is that what you were looking at?
Well, I think we should do it earlier in
Yeah.
January. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the meeting days. What does your calendar look like, Ian?
My
The third and fourth week. Week
are
of
we
the
looking at
19th.
are we looking at a Wednesday?
Well, Dick and Sean, I don't understand your new schedules. Is Wednesday a better day or Thursday? And Harry, weigh in too, please.
Are
The
you
21st
saying later this month, or are you talking about January?
January.
January, okay.
I'm talking about January 23rd, or 21st, or 22nd,
Those don't work for me.
or 28th, or 29th,
29th doesn't work.
I could
28th.
I could do the
28th
20.
is good.
That works for me.
28th works for you, Ian?
Yep.
what day of the week is that? I'm sorry.
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
That should work.
Harry,
yes.
Sean?
It probably works for me. I have at least one committee that meets on Wednesdays, but it's usually in the middle of the month. It'd be, if they
All
move
right,
it
so-
to 28th, that would be a surprise to me. But so let's
All
pencil that in. In general, Thursdays are better than Wednesdays for me, but many
Kate said she
Wednesdays
can,
work.
yeah, all right. Unless you want to go to the 27th. Anyone want to look at the 27th? Kate, Dick?
Hold on, my computer is getting in the
Look at
way.
the
No,
27th.
27th is fine.
Dick? And Ian, I should ask you first.
Yeah, 27th is fine.
I think it's okay.
Okay, 27, what time do you guys, Harry, is 27th Tuesday okay?
Sure, that's fine too.
Thank you. What time? Is this 5:30 work for everyone?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, 27th Friday, 27th Tuesday, excuse me. And Ian, you'll put something together, I guess,
Yep. Happy
and
to.
run the public hearing. Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Good. So
And-
Carla has her hand up.
Carla, talk.
Thank you. I texted the moderator to ask about scoping parameters, and his response was, I think they can go wherever they want. The referral was for the subject matter of 11 and 12. They aren't bound by the scope rules of town meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay. So let's do a new article.
No, well,
Okay.
that's
Mm. Mm.
I
Anyone
do
else
have
in the audience want to say anything at
I'm-
this
I
point?
do
not
have an
sure
even
that-
broader question, and I don't know if it needs to be answered now, and I'm not sure if Ian has thought about it or whether we should even go there. But are there any other restrictions similar to the restrictions in the current bylaw that apply to the advisory committee that apply to other town boards and committees that
Oh,
might create similar problems in the future,
oh,
like the one we're having right now? That would be beyond the scope of the charge of the referral, but it's still something that we might want to think about given our responsibilities as a committee. No answer is necessary, but I was just wondering as we delved into this one whether there were any other similar committees out there like the advisory committee.
Anyone in the audience have anything they want to say? Jocelyn, you said no?
No, thank you, Jean.
Anyone else? No or yes? Okay.
I would just encourage, yeah, I would just encourage the thing that most people said, which is keep it as simple as you can with as bright lines as possible. Because if somebody had told me a year ago there was a problem with the current statute, it would not have been the definition of standing committee that I would have focused on. And yet that was one of the two issues that came up in town council's most recent interpretation. So it seems to me the root of they just can't be these people, school board, whatever, is the clearest way to go.
Thank you. All right. Ian, do you want to touch base with town council? Or wait till
Sure.
let him hear. If not, he'll hear it.
I think we're trying to avoid. I'm happy to touch base with them. Yes, is the short answer.
I think it'd be
Yeah.
I think it'd be courteous.
Yeah. Happy to do that.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments? And anyone want to say anything on the committee? Moving on, Ian?
Yeah. So do you want to the Town Administrator Act?
Yes.
So let me just give me 1 second. So at Gina, at your suggestion, I set up another
Meeting?
conversation with Chaz about the Town Administrator Act. And he had a couple of I thought interesting comments based on, I think it had been about 6 months since I had one of these conversations with him, maybe longer. Overall, his view is that the system is working well as a whole. I think he feels like he has a clearly delineated role and responsibilities. He thinks there's clarity in the roles of the town administrator and what he's doing in the select board, and that it's working well. He continues to believe that there are things that the select board is doing now that they should be allowed to delegate. The number one on the list, maybe the whole list, is licensing. That's been a perennial topic of discussion. He thinks secondarily, I'm going to retract that. It's the only one on the list. There's probably another one on the list, which is police and fire. I think he continues to view that having the select board serve as the police and fire commissioners, particularly with respect to staffing decisions, is challenging. The authority of the select board he described as nebulous. And I think we've seen that play out with potential select board liability issues on hiring decisions. So, he feels that he has operational responsibility over police and fire, and that flows from sort of how it runs in real life, but the overall authority vested in the select board flows from the statutes. He thinks that he continues to think that there's awkwardness there. So uh, he, I guess, further just sort of expressed the view that he feels comfortable in his authority. He doesn't feel that he's being unreasonably constrained by the select board. He feels that there's a strong line of communication and an open line of communication. That the communication with the select board is, he described as constant, that he keeps them updated on what's going on through emails where he BCs everyone so that they're not able to communicate with each other about it, but he's communicating with all of them. He has a standing meeting with the chair to talk about anything that's on the chair's mind. He has also a standing agenda setting meeting for select board meetings with the chair and the vice chair. All of those are working well. There are 2 appointment issues that have come up recently. One with Parks and Recs Commission and one with the Council on Aging. As everyone may remember, those 2 committees are called out specifically in the Town Administrator Act, and they give those committees certain authority in
The hiring and firing.
in hiring and firing. So he's had hiring, and he's had to hire someone in both of those director positions in the last year and a half or so. The process that and so there was some ambiguity in the Town Administrator Act in terms of what order do things go in. Does he make a selection and then it gets presented to those committees and then it gets presented to the select board? Can he only present one choice to those committees, or does he have to present multiple choices to those committees? The way he applied it, and it played out relatively smoothly, was he got approval from the committees before he made his selection. He then got approval from those committees, and then he presented that selection to the select board. And that's the process. I think he would prefer not to have to go through that with those particular committees, and it's a little bit arbitrary that those are the 2 committees that are called out in the act as opposed to all others. And so if we were going to make revisions, I think that's an area that he would like us to look at. The last topic that we talked about was the sort of proposed and then aborted warrant article relating to the HR board. And he essentially said, he felt that politically he could have done a better job on thinking about that before presenting, sort of starting the process to present to town meeting. He has gone back to the drawing board and is engaged with the unions on a solution to the problem that he sees there. He thinks we've essentially outgrown the HR board as a community. But he's gonna engage with the unions first, have that discussion, let that run its course before kind of making any judgments about what he might want to propose to the select board in terms of a new warrant article for an upcoming town meeting. So I guess I'll stop there. That's sort of the summary. Licensing continues to be at the top of his list, being allowed to, having the select board being allowed to delegate that. Secondarily, looking at police and fire and and thirdly, what he would call cleaning up the appointment for those committees that are called out in the Town Administrator Act.
So I have a question. I may have to go soon. I apologize. I challenge, I do not think his authority is clearly delineated. And so I don't know how we address this in looking at this issue. I think that he has been expanding his authority and is continuing to take steps to do that. So I don't know how we address that in looking at the Town Administrator Act. If that's something we do or not.
Well, originally what we wanted to do was see if we could streamline the whole process for both the select board and the town and the town staff.
Well, I
Because
think
it's,
well, right. Well, my concern is that by streamlining it, that might lead to granting the town administrator more power. And that might not be what is in the best interests of the town.
well, maybe I used the wrong word. There's a lot of running around, passing back and forth, and the effort was to try to see if you could reduce some of the duplication of work.
Right, but
I
For
hear your
example-
concern. I wasn't aware of it, but
well, for example, the Human Relations Board has not been involved in any discussions with Chaz relating to what will be going on in the future. He has contacted the unions, but the Human Relations Board itself, the members feel very strongly that it should not be dissolved and that it provides value. So you would think that he would be reaching out to them if he's considering filing another article. So I have heard different opinions from them as to what they think is going, the rationale is behind the article. And that concerns from around, whatever, general concerns that Chaz, the town administrator, is trying to incorporate a lot of control that actually should be given under our town structure to the select board or remain with the select board.
okay.
And I'm not talking licensing. So what is our role in that? I mean, we have to have a structure that has the legislative branch currently at the top and not the town administrator, an appointed branch at the top. So if too much power is delegated by the select board, the voters are not getting what they voted for. I mean,
Harry?
that's, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't, if you, go ahead, Kate, if you're not finished.
No, I'm done. I just need to figure out how to mute myself because no, okay, yeah, hold on. Sorry. I have a 7 o'clock. I may not be able to mute it. I'm trying to figure out how to mute myself so I can just listen. Oh, wait, I think I found it. Okay, I'm muting myself. Okay. All right, we can go.
Harry, you unmuted. I didn't know if you had something that you were about to say.
No, I was just gonna comment quickly generally. I mean, I think Chaz tends to be strongly executively inclined. And maybe that's some of Kate's concern. I also think some of the delegation by the select board, I believe they can currently do now if they so choose. You know, statutorily, it may be their prerogative, but I think certain things they can delegate anyway. I think when we heard from them before, whether it was here or maybe it was in a different public meeting, they had said things like liquor licensing, they like to do it because it really becomes kind of a neighborhood issue. And likewise, they had concerns about things like noise variance because that's, you know, can be an emotional neighborhood issue too. The issue of the rec department and the council on aging is a little bit stickier. And I think that we would kind of have to sort of think through. I'm glad to hear that he feels that the structure we have now seems to be working pretty well for him. I know in an earlier conversation, he was, you know, of the strong feeling that as sort of the town administrator, he should be able to hire and fire at his discretion without oversight. But as we found when we looked at other municipalities, no other municipality really has that. And I think we also mentioned, I don't know that it was here, it might have been in a conversation, that in other municipalities, what some of them had was that the town administrator could fire somebody and that the Board of Selectmen had
Override.
say 10 days to override. And his comeback was, and I thought it was a very good comeback, you know, if we had that in place and that were to happen, that would be a signal to me that they just did not have any confidence in me, and I would tender my resignation. You know, I suppose you could make a similar argument that if I'm the town administrator and I feel very strongly that this director or whoever it may be is really problematic and they really need to be gone, and I present that to the select board and I can't get the vote from the select board, you could essentially make that same argument. They're not taking me seriously and maybe this isn't the place for them. So I think it cuts either way. But I don't see that we really have to be different than any other municipality in terms of the firing portion. Those two other areas of hiring, I understand that's something we may want to look at. Police and fire, he's voiced his concerns before that he felt they had a little too much political leverage in this community. And he found that problematic at times, or at least harder to wrestle with at times. But I'm not sure that a community is willing to give what in essence would be a police commissioner's role to somebody who's not elected either. So those are just some of the thoughts.
Anyone else with thoughts, Sean?
I don't really have much to add now. It's 7 o'clock and it's also my wife's birthday. Even if I'm not taking her out to dinner, she would like to see me at some point today.
Would
don't
you
know
like us all to sing?
Wait, can I make just one comment? I don't know if I've unmuted myself. I'm on my phone and I don't know how to do Zoom, but it'll be very quick. So in the police commissioner issue or having ability to hire and fire, that is related to the eliminating the HRB issue, because that'll have to do with collective bargaining issues and having.
Kate, you just remuted yourself.
It was the host who did it. So that it all needs to be viewed collectively. That's all I'm saying.
Any other, Dick or Betsy or Jean, any other comments?
Yeah, let me, I know that they had, the select board had tried to lighten the licensing load by having the licensing hearings heard by one select board member at a different time. And I'm not, I don't know whether that has mitigated the issue. I take it from Chaz's comment, it has not, Ian. Or
Yeah.
is it?
Well, from his comment, I would say it hasn't, but we've never really heard directly from the select board on this point. So it's hard. I don't know that we have enough information to know, if our goal is to lessen the select board's burden, it would be interesting to hear from the select board if they feel that they have a burden.
Yeah. I will say that when I was on the select board, the licensing hearings were, to my mind, one of the greatest wastes of time, not just for the select board, but also for the applicants, many of whom didn't feel comfortable coming by themselves. So they had to hire an attorney. And there was the time and the expense that was involved with that. There were a few cases where there was a bad actor who was seeking a license renewal. And I think there should be some way to provide an escape valve for the pressure that might raise. And I assume that exists now. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the way it's written now is it's the right to delegate is a may. It's a may right with exceptions. And so there are certain things for which there is no right to delegate, but the ones for which there are discretionary. So I think the select board can reserve for itself whatever it wants.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know. I know that the licensing board or the licensing hearings at the regular select meetings are not the real time sink that they were years ago. But I don't know whether it's still a problem.
I'm surprised that he wants to take on something like that, which is, you'd have to hire somebody, I would think.
Well, a lot of it, Gene, is really pretty perfunctory. You make sure that the person has gone through their police checks, in terms of the police department has done their check, that their criminal records don't preclude them.
But you're taking a burden off the town staff. They've got a lot to do.
No, but they have to do that anyway. And
they do.
The problem is was that by the time you got to the select board, with the exception of a few cases where there were, bad actors with, people spilling out.
Drunken bartenders. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You'd have a select board meeting that would run late, and people would be sitting around with their lawyers running the clock.
Yeah.
For no good reason at all. And by the time they came up, everybody would say, "Hey, welcome to the town. I hope you're successful. Approved."
Oh my gosh.
So.
Yeah. Well, any comments by anyone in the outside of the committee? Okay, Ian, back to you.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my feeling is, if we're going to pursue something in earnest, we probably ought to hear from members of the select board. I don't hear others may have their ear to the ground better than I do, but I don't hear a tremendous swell of passion around any of these issues at the moment.
And you
But
don't see any savings in time or effort. at this point.
Well, may I make a comment or two comments? Um, the and I think everybody probably knows this at this point. The City Charter Commission has failed. So if what we're doing, if one is looking at improving government or changing government, it will be, at least for the foreseeable future, within the context of our current town government. There's not going to be
Except that you need overrides and overrides and overrides. So if there's something we can
Right.
do to help,
but there's not going to be a charter commission.
no.
I mean, we can't say, okay, we can defer this. This is in the bailiwick of the Charter Commission, the City Charter Commission, or any charter commission. And the other, and this is just a personal observation, it seems to me that select board members may be sitting now on more committees than was true in the past. And I don't know if that's an accurate observation or not, but that could be a real time sink for select board members if it is in fact happening. And I don't know, Ian, whether there was any discussion of lightening the load, but in a sense, that's by choice that they do that.
yeah, I mean, I wonder if it would be helpful. I mean, we've met with Chaz now, I think, a bunch of times and reported back. I wonder if maybe one of us wants to be delegated to sit down with Bernard and just as chair and get his perspective on these same questions and report back on that. I mean, I think we can't, there's open meeting law issues with doing groups, but I
You're
wonder,
right. There's only one.
yeah, but if
John
someone,
or Dick? Dick,
Not well. Let me just say, I am in the midst of this expenditures and revenue subcommittee now, and I mean, I'd be happy to have a conversation with Bernard, but I'm just looking at. I have like 6 meetings now in January with that. So
What if we brought Bernard here to have a conversation?
Not a bad idea.
I'd vote for that.
same.
you want to extend the invitation, Gene?
See what he's doing on the 27th or
I'd
28th?
rather
whichever
have
date it's
John
gonna be.
go talk to him first. This is a bad committee. Sean,
I'd be happy to talk to Bernard if he will talk to me
he'll talk to you
in January.
in January.
And, you know, it's also worth pointing out that Bernard is not only the chair of the select board, but I'm not sure if I can add up all of the years of his experience, not only on the select board, but on the
Right,
committees,
yeah.
but he's certainly way ahead of the other members in terms of his experience of town government.
Yeah. And actually, they're each one of them, the board. But why don't you start with him?
Okay. I'll also try to persuade him to come meet with the committee too.
But first, vet him. Thank you. All right. All right. So we have a meeting. Ian, you have to tell me how to word this hearing.
What did you say for this one? I think this one was fine, and we can just add public
We
hearing
can talk
on.
about it as 11 and 12?
Yeah,
Yeah.
on referral from 11 and 12.
I'll send
referral
you a
of
copy
11.
before and Dick too, if it's okay with you, Dick.
I don't know how far we can go, but it's tremendously helpful for these public hearings to give people something to react to beforehand.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, something that the committee has approved in any way, but it focuses
I'm going to
comments.
send it to you too, Sean. Your
Yeah,
edits are
No,
wonderful.
I'm saying posting as in the agenda pack. It's something that
Yeah.
they can
Yeah.
read, even if it's not something that's a committee product, that they can say, I like that, I hate that, I would do it differently, as opposed to just letting the conversation go off in all directions, which
I
it
think-
will probably, because people will have lots of ideas.
I think you,
Sean, I agree. I already, while we were doing this, made a shortened 3 options sheet, and I can add that as well as the samples as soon as it's posted.
okay. Okay, I have a triumvirate here.
I would not post again the examples from other communities, because that will get people going off in all sorts of tangents that may or may not really be relevant to Brookline, but they can go back and look at the document from this meeting if they're really fascinated with that question.
I don't know if folks agree with Sean, that's fine with me. I don't have a preference.
Well, I mean, essentially, you'd be posting a few of 1 or 2 from other communities, and then a variant of 2 and 3, which or
Yeah.
something like that. So
Yep. Yeah.
Believe me, I'll be in touch. All right. Any
you
other
won't
business?
you won't be able to do it because you're doing the minutes for this meeting, Gene. So thank you.
We'll discuss that. I'll get you back. And your little dog. All right. Any other business? What, Jocelyn? What?
She said the materials in this evening's agenda were very helpful, as indeed they were.
Thank you.
They
Yes,
were.
Oh,
thank
the
you very much.
materials
That
were
is-
wonderful.
That
Yeah.
is all Ian Rothman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here. All right. Okay. Anything else?
This is the most praise I've gotten for anything in years.
Oh, then we won't end the meeting. We'll keep
Maybe we should
talking about
reconsider, Ian.
Ian, do you have teenage kids?
Yeah. Only one left. Only one
Well,
teenager
that
left.
explains it.
Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Dick,
Second.
Second,
did you count it, Dick?
all in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, one and all. And I have to do the minutes, huh? That's a tough one. Good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Ian.